here we are at the Messenger Summit. It is my absolute honor to be able to introduce our next messenger speaker, who is KOvach. He comes from Las Vegas, Nevada. The title of his talk is Awaken to Your Clear Desire. And the website address is thecleardesire.com, TheCleardesire.com. So join me in a warm messenger welcome to KOvach.
Thank you. It does seem like an eternity. And so I first got to start with gratitude. Thank you for being here. It's the last of the last, and I was told you got to knock them dead, so I'm going to do my best to deliver that. And I also want to thank my wife at home, who's waiting for me to come home. Thank you, Mikey Jofiel and my wife, Tony. So I'm blessed that she's put up with this and allowed me to be here to share this message. So my name is KOvach, and I state that with power, and I am a messenger, and I am proud to say that. And to stand here and for 5 days to watch each one of you come out of your shells and share your personal stories, which we all know now and I'm learning now, is so powerful. So powerful, and it's not how you do it, it's just that you do it. Right? So let me begin with my story. My story starts, I'm going to back up about 8, 9 years, 10 years, and I was bouncing at the House of Blues, pure ego, right? I was about 280 pounds because I wanted to be the protector. And I was in a pretty good place in my life, and I happened to, at the one point, not be expecting it, to find the woman of my dreams. And I know she was the woman of my dreams, and this is a funny story because as I met her on Valentine's Day weekend, she was visiting from Los Angeles. Right across her shirt said, "Love sucks." And I said, that's the one for me. And I did marry that woman. So a short time later, I had the beautiful wife, I had the house, I had a good job. I had started a small business from nothing. I was working my head off. I decided one day, you know what? We had just had our first child. I'm never home. I got to be home. I knew my place. So that was like a freeing thought. I'm going to sell this business, and I sold it. I made a ton of money. And in the middle of selling the business, I ran into another opportunity, and I said, wow, I had to supplement that income. Here's an opportunity. We could work from home. The bad news about that is it was 2008, right? We know what happened there. So within a very short time, that was gone. And I was in a very deep and dark place. To further it, everything seemed to be tumbling other than that. There was no money. I knew that, and the first time in my life, I was going to have to declare bankruptcy, and I felt like I let everybody down. And it was the first time I went into a place of fear, and I know now because I was trying to support somebody else other than myself. And that was pretty scary. And I remember the day when I realized something was really wrong. And I work in a school, and I'm standing there. It was about halfway through the year, and there were certain teachers you just avoided because they were just not very nice. Everything was negative. And I remember standing there one day in the hall. It was after school, and I'm like, yeah. And then I realized I had been talking for about an hour with these people on a regular basis. And I was like, what am I doing? I don't even know who I am anymore. So I knew something had to change, and I began looking. And of course, when you ask, when you're ready, the student's ready, the teacher comes. So the information began coming into my life. And I began looking for another job to supplement that income. And I began, for the first time in my life, following my intuition. And for some reason, I started looking at Craigslist for a job. I have no idea really why. Someone said it might be a good idea. And I knew I didn't want just a part-time job that meant nothing. I wanted to do something meaningful. So I began looking, and for some reason, I kept looking under education. And every time I looked under there, it was all tutors and such. I don't know why I kept going back. I'm a counselor. They're never going to hire a counselor. Of course, one day I go there, and capital letters, educational counselor. So I'm like, all right, I'll call up. Better yet, $25 an hour. Even better, working for a jail. Okay, that was one of the two things I never wanted to do as a counselor. Right? I already done the first one, so I'm like, okay, we'll follow this. So I call a guy, and he says, well, I'm sorry to tell you that I've already have like 100 applications. There's only one position. And again, that intuition. And I said, well, you know what? I've been working in the school district for about 10 years at that point, and I'm looking for something different. He said, really? I said, yeah. And he says, well, fax me over your resume. Okay, I'll do that. And make sure you mark that you talk to me. And I did that. Didn't have a resume. Did that the rest of the day at work, faxed it over. And of course, looking around, waiting, I kind of gave up on it. And I get a call at work on my cell phone, and I've never answered my cell phone at this point to that time. And so I answered it, and I said, hello. And he's like, hi, this is Frank. I'd like to offer you the position. I'm thrilled, but at the same time, I'm like, I really don't want to work in the jail. And he says, well, I got to tell you something, though. You weren't my first choice. I don't care. $25 an hour, I'm okay with that. But he said, you were the first one to answer your phone today. Right? So I fell in love with this position, working at the Clark County Detention Center, working with inmates, adults, and males and females, and it was a voluntary class. And I didn't know what to teach them. I was really kind of lost and pretty scared. And so what I found was I began to teach them self-empowerment and self-love. And I very quickly realized that they were no different than me, and they were no different than you, except for the choices that they've made. And the classes began being sold out, and I'm not saying this for ego. I'm telling you this because they want the message. They want to feel self-empowered. They want to reach that clear desire, that spot inside of them where they're making decisions from their soul. And we all have that. Everyone that stepped up on stage today knows what I'm talking about. And everybody out there can find it if you haven't already. So I thought, this is where I'm supposed to be. And yet life throws another curve. I came home one day to a phone call, and it's my boss. This is after about 3.5+ years. And I said, hey, Frank, what's going on? I'll never forget, it was a Friday. Come home, and he says, well, I wish I had some good news for you, Joe, but I don't. The jail considers you a security risk. They don't want you back, and there's nothing I could do. Right there. Yet, I was just like, okay, hung up the phone. That was the conversation right there. No longer, no nothing. What do I do? This was my life. I was inspiring. I saw miracles every night I went there. Now what? I heard it in my voice in my ear, one of 2 times in my life that I've heard a voice, and it said, let it go. Something more is coming. And I live by the mantra that everything that happens in my life is for my best and highest good. I've gotten to that point through the hard times. And so I said, okay, but yet I just lost about 500 close relationships in a phone call. So that hurts. And I carry that with me to remind me, to drive me, to keep that desire alive inside. So I still wasn't sure what's going on now. But I was kind of excited in a way because, again, if life takes this away, what's coming? So this year began in school, September 2011, actually August in Las Vegas. And this is the first day of school began. It was fun, and I'm the 8th grade counselor this year, which means I follow them from 6th, 7th, and 8th. And so now they're 8th graders. I've known them for 3 years, and we should be excited. And we were. We're high-fiving in the hallways. And we get halfway through the day, and lunch comes. And I come back to my office, and there's a girl there, bawling her eyes out, complete emotional wreck. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the first day of school. What is going on here? So I invite her in, and she sits down, and I sit at my desk, and I say, how can I help you? What's going on? And she looks up, can barely talk, and she says, Mr. KOvach, do you have something sharp in your desk I can have? Wow. First day of school. Didn't make it through half a day. I'm going to fast forward a couple months later. This was a Friday, another Friday I'll never forget. I'm in my office helping a young lady, and she's having some troubles at home. And this is all in about a 12-minute span. I get 2 phone calls from the dean. We're having some issues with some boys from stealing. The teacher next to me and down the hall calls me out to remove a student. I keep coming back, apologizing to the student I have now. The teacher comes down, knocks on my door. Hey, so-and-so, we have an issue here because his father's beating him. Okay, let me take care of one problem at a time. Oh, we weren't done yet. Ding, goes the email. One of my special ed kids wants to kill himself. Wow, this is what's going on. And so I knew I've been slowly being guided to take the message that I learned through teaching the adults to the children. Because, and I'll be honest with you, when I taught the adults, they kept pressuring me to do that themselves. They don't want anybody ending up there. So I've begun doing that in many different ways. As a matter of fact, just recently my church ironically came up to me and asked me to teach a teen program at my church in Las Vegas, which with open arms, yes. And so, how do we get to this point that we're so lost from 10-year-olds all the way up to adults? And I'll be honest with you, I was teaching 70-year-olds in prison, and they had never heard the message. They never got it. So the best way to sum this up is a story I heard from Wayne Dyer. You might be familiar with it or not, but it goes something like this. Imagine that I'm in my house, and I'm getting ready to go out, and I grab my keys, and I'm walking through, and the lights go out. Power failure. So I'm looking else, and I stumble, and I drop my keys. And I can't find them. So I'm looking around, and I'm looking around. I just can't find my keys. But I look outside the window, and there's a street light on outside. So there's a thought in my head that says, you know what, I'm never going to find my keys in the dark. I've been trying. I'm going to go outside where the light is, and I'm going to look for my keys. So I'm outside now, under the light, looking for my keys, and I'm not finding them. And my neighbor comes over, and he says, Joe, what's going on? What are you doing? I said, well, I lost my keys. Can you help me find them? Sure, I'll help you find them. So now we're both down there. We're looking for my keys. And finally, after a few minutes, he says, well, where did you lose your keys? Well, over there in the house. Well, why are we out here looking when it's in there? And see, that's the problem most of us have. We have a problem on the inside, but we go looking on the outside for the answers. And that simple analogy, when I found that, I knew it was worth gold. And I'll tell you, everybody I've ever told since gets it. And that's the key. So there's a few things that I guess, my process that I take kids through and adults through. It's the same process because you know what? Whether you're 42 like me, you're 70 or 12, we're all a kid inside. Right? That's what we've all been talking about. Finding that love, that joy, that fun, that clear desire inside of what life is really about, because it is the universal experience. You know, I'm a messenger, but I'll tell you the one thing I like doing most, living life to the fullest. So the first really opportunity for me, or the process, a step of the process, would be to be willing and have the courage to take full responsibility for your life. And it's amazing how many people don't want to do that. But that has to be the first step. You have to be willing to get out of your own way, like I did in the middle of that hallway, and finally said, wow, I just don't know what I'm doing, but I have to take care of this myself. This is my story, my problems, my shortcomings. And in a way, when you finally do, it's a freeing thought, because you realize, you know what? I've been on this ship all along, and I've been blaming everybody else for the way it's been teetering and tottering and making me sick. And that's because that position behind the wheel is my position. I keep going down underneath and going to bed for a while and then complaining when we don't end up where we want to be. So step one, take control. Take that power back, because that's that first step of empowerment. Now, number two sometimes comes a little bit before number one, but it still always slides away, and that's being aware of what's going on around you. And that usually comes immediately, because once you say, I'm ready to take control of my choices, of where I am, you begin to start putting that cause and effect together. You know, I realize when I'm with so-and-so and so-and-so, I just don't feel good. And I realize that, you know, when I'm really kind of feel urged to do this and I don't, that doesn't feel good either. But when I do this, it feels great. But then everybody else around me says that's not what I'm supposed to do. And that's what we do. That's just like going back outside looking for your keys again. So it might take a couple times or so, going back to taking that control and saying yes, being aware, and then finally getting to the third step, which is where we begin to understand how our beliefs really do dictate in the beginning, as many of us talked about, where we end up. And there's a really powerful story, which is a true story, that happened in the jail. I was trying to teach them, we were going through some Wayne Dyer steps about egos, where they trip us up. And it was about letting our idea of respect and bravado go. Now imagine me teaching this in a jail. Okay, I had to be kind of crazy to even begin that, but you know what? They responded, and it was beautiful. Except one gentleman, and he was probably about 50 years old, and he just wasn't getting it. And some of my guys had been in the class for a while, and they were so awesome because they would let him go and learn this lesson on his own. So I said, well, tell me, what don't you get? He goes, well, I don't get, that's not how it works for me. I said, well, tell me about that. He says, you know what, I can remember all the way back to when I was in kindergarten, and this kid took my toy truck, and he just wouldn't give it back. So I walked up, I smacked him in the face, and he gave me my truck back. And that's what works for me. And I looked at him, I said, do you realize you just told me your problem? You're not hearing that. He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, you just told me that you're behaving in the same way you did at 5 as you are now here. And you want to wonder why you're here. And the light went on. And he sat down. And it was amazing. One of my best students since then. You know, when we begin to go, wait a minute, again, because it's so easy to say, yeah, I'm taking control of my life, but not over here, because that's not my fault. Oh, I didn't attract that sickness. That's not my fault. You know, this isn't my fault. Why is this person treating me so bad? That's not my fault. So we begin to put the beliefs and systems together, cause and effect. And again, we may find ourselves back at that comfort zone in step 1, having to reclaim our power over and over again, but it's worth the ride. Now, the 4th process is beginning to learn a little deeper about how the laws of the universe work. And I wish I had an hour to talk to you about the law of attraction, because it is my absolute favorite thing to teach. Because, again, it's just so brilliant, and I have to give credit to Jerry and Esther Hicks and the teachings of Abraham to help me get to where I am today. Yeah, phenomenal. And I got to see them live a few months ago, and it's just, if there was ever a time to realize how far ahead we're moving as a collective consciousness, just go to one of those workshops. It's phenomenal. You know what, I got to tell you, though, the energy here was probably higher. I'll be honest with you. Yeah. And I'll tell you why, and it was a personal journey, and that's simply because I felt more comfortable here. You know, standing in front of almost what I would call God and Esther, I was like, God, I want to ask a question so bad, but am I worthy? And of course, that's not going to light me up for them to see, right? So, the law of attraction, you know what? It's very simple. We go from A to B. We go from the highest joy, love, appreciation down to complete disempowerment. And this is so easy. Just wherever you're feeling lets you know whether you're on track with what you choose in your life or not. And here's the thing, though. When we want to manifest something, we have to be in the good feelings. We can't be sick and complaining every time I cough and sneeze and blow my nose and then say, I'm attracting health. Because it doesn't work. It's in a different vibration. And it's amazing how I share this with even our teens, and they get it so quick. And then I think back to when I was young. And I was born with a cleft palate. So I was born basically like this. Now, you can't avoid ridicule when you can't change looks. And you know what? I handled it pretty well. I have beautiful parents that helped get me through. But it was a little confusing bringing up, because I had my dad, old school Italian, whoop him, and I had my mom, the little angel, you know, basically pray for them. You're okay, I love you, son. And I bless them because I'm in a perfect balance, like we heard Deborah talking about earlier. You got to be in that balance. The last step, or maybe the second last step, I would say the next step, is once you understand how it works and finding your path on a consistent basis, stay in your beingness. And we've heard this all week long. Stay in your beingness. And that is, again, the joy that you create on a daily basis, however you choose to, whatever you want to do. If you want to be a medium, be a medium. If you want to be a janitor, be a janitor. I laugh all the time. I want people to, love what they do. And for example, my bug man who's coming tomorrow loves his job. He'll talk to you forever about a new bug I found. And I love that because, you know what? I know he's doing a kick-ass job. So, whoever comes into my life, I want them to love what they do. Because there's too many people walking around that don't, they're just going through life. And let's face it, I'm looking, I'm like 42 years old. I got to get on this ball again. I got to get going. I got to enjoy every moment that I can. But first, now that I know I can do that, I got to tell them how to do this at an earlier age. Because that's what's going to shift it. And I got to really thank Max Simon for helping me understand it a little bit. And I had a little confusion because I love still working with adults, and I still continue to do so. But I keep getting called to work with the teens. And he simply asked me, he said, Joe, it's this easy. When you're on your deathbed and you think about who you work with, where do you want to leave your legacy? And as a father of 2 young children, I don't think I had a blink before I knew the answer. So I said to teens, he said, are you sure? I said, yes. It took 3 hours. Actually, it took shorter than that because, Kelly, you came up to me immediately after that and told me, I just feel you working with kids. And then a little while later, I got a phone call from one of my ex-students who happened to run into students from the school, who ran into one of my students from the jail. And they connected, and he said, you got to call this guy, Joe KOvach. And she's like, that's my old counselor. She calls me while we're here. I had another call in between early this morning, another one, young guy. And he's like, Joe, I messed up real bad. I hit my girl again. She left me. I don't know what to do. I started using again a little month. I've been clean for about a month, but I'm just lost. What do I do? Now, I can talk to him like this because he's one of my students. I said, you know what? Tell your new story. You got to remember, step one, you're in control. Who's in control? I'm in control. I made him say that, and immediately, energy changed. Oh, I'm in control. That's me doing that. Yeah, you're in control. So now what are you going to do about it? I got to tell my new story, he says. He knows about the vortex from Abraham. Happy place. Stay in your happy place. So as I close, times I could talk all day, I want to tell each and every one who's, there's a beautiful quote from Hafiz of Persia. And he says, I wish I could show you, when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being. And that's what I plan to do and be a messenger of. Thank you, and may your God go with you.